So Jesus is about to tell another story. He tells three in order. The first one, if you remember, was the man with the father with the two sons. And the second one right here is directed again especially to, well, first, the leadership of the Jewish people, second to Israel, and he's talking to the crowds. He wasn't just talking to the leadership there, like the chief priests and the scribes and things, but he was talking to all the people. And then I don't want to forget this, in case I forget it, I'm going to say it up front, that these parables, though they're directed to those particular people at that time, really has power and is relative, if I could say that. It also helps us, the Christian church, that God, can take those same principles from this and point to us. So I don't point to any Jewish person or, I've sinned against him. You have sinned against him. And so man, as general human beings, has rejected so much of God's plan and so much of what Jesus wanted. Well, here's what happened. This is on a Tuesday now of the very week that Jesus is going to die. And boy, that day was the busiest maybe of all his days. I mean, he's still reaching out, by the way. He's reaching very strongly into these people who are hard. He's particularly directed into the people who really are rejecting him, not all of them. And he's really reaching very powerfully with strong warnings and hard words and all that. That's sometimes what it takes with some hardened hearts. God wants us to be tender and soft and gentle, and he was too, but sometimes you have to be really strong, especially in a desperate attempt to try and wake them up and say, do you guys know what you're doing? Well, this next parable, first he talks about the parable by saying, hey, hear this parable, put your ears on this, listen to this one, and this story. And so he said there was a man who was a landowner, and he had a vineyard. And so this evidently is a pretty wealthy guy, and he has a vineyard. And so and he said he really loved this vineyard. He loved the vine, loved the land, loved the people. And so he decided to build a really strong wall around it. So I'm going to just draw like this. I can't draw it all, but let's say this is a wall and it goes around, on the ends there. And so it could be thorns, a lot of times really a hedge of really thick thorns, so that animals and even thieves couldn't get through very easily. It'd be really difficult for them to climb over all that, like thick thorn bushes, or literally stones and wall. So I don't know, I'll just go like this. This is the wall, let's say, however it is, kind of a fenced in area. And a lot of times they built them on the hillsides, a lot of those. I mean, they're all over places in Israel and all, particularly on Mount Carmel, way up there, but also down below, even in the South Negev part of Israel and all, just all over the place. So Jesus was taking another familiar thing that everybody knew about. And it's right around Jerusalem, too. There's vineyards and all over the place, a lot of vines. And, a vineyard, as you know, are those that produces grapes. And by the way, what they would do, some of the things would be like, let's say they lined up rows. Now we're looking at it from the top down, and there could be 6 to 8 or more feet in between these. And then they would take sticks or stakes that actually stuck up middle. Like now I'm going to draw it differently. I'm going to draw it as if this is a ground, and they took up sticks, and the vine would climb that wall. It would go like this, with a lot of leaves first. The leaves would come out, and then finally the grapes, and lots of grapes would be in there, and they would take those grapes off of the vines and all that, and then they would make all sorts of things. Well, first they'd eat grapes, but a lot of times wine was taken from that, like as a drink, and even raisins are made from grapes. By the way, can you see the lady up here, how she's holding grapes there? I don't have any grapes in my refrigerator at this time. And raisins actually come from grapes. I guess most of you know that, but maybe the younger ones might not know that these raisins, which I really kind of like, there's the raisins right there. Those are grapes, but they dry up after about 18 hours or more, like up to maybe 3 days. They'd kind of put it out, and it would dry in the suns and wither. and you have to try and extract or take out all the water out of it. But anyway, so let me go back to my artwork, which I'm not really an artist. Here's my canvas, right? It's sitting here. And so he said this landowner built a wall around it, and then he would build a wine press in it. Wine press is two different layers of where it could be wood at the top or it could even be stone. And people would walk in the, they would like sometimes two more. There is a passage in Isaiah. No, where is it? Jeremiah that talks about a lone guy, you know, but usually you have a bunch of them, either 2, 3, up to 7 or something, and the grapes would be down here, and just piles of them. They just pile these grapes, and then you have all these guys and men or women, and they'd walk and smash those grapes. Picture a bunch of grapes, and then you just push your foot on it and you smash it, and then that juice that would go in here. There would be a hole somewhere like that one that I accidentally did. It's perfect, and it would be kind of slanted, and the juice would flow down into a vat or a I don't know, a big bowl of some sort, and then you would collect all that juice up there, and that's how you got your wine. So that's what would happen. Now this owner, in this story, built his own wine press. He didn't take it to someone else and hire it or something. He built it right in there, and they also built a tower. So I don't know, I'll just draw a tower here. Sometimes it would be kind of small, but a lot of times it could go up to like 50 feet or even 80, I read. You know, they can go way up here, and there can be a place to sit down or stand with a window. Build a tower, and basically you could watch from all directions to make sure some people aren't coming to take it, or maybe wild animals that need to be taken care of or whatever. And so there would be a tower in the midst of this thing. And so it was really well done. And then he would hire it. Now here's where it gets kind of sad. This landowner hired it out to tenants, T-E-N, I'll write the word here, T-E-N-A-N-T-S, or like people who would work he would hire people, employees who would work it and to collect the out of the fields and everything out of this huge place. We'll put it way back here. You know, this is like who knows how many acres. And all these vines would be up in here, just tons of them. And then they would collect all the grapes and just put them in there for the harvest time. And sometimes it would be a long year. This guy, by the way, the owner, left on a journey, or he went abroad, like went far away or whatever. And it could be up to a year or whatever away. And then when the time of harvest came, where, you know, is supposed to get his fruits, he sent servants to these tenants. It doesn't say how many, but there's a lot of workers here who's working his stuff. And by the way, the tenants made money throughout the year. Well, how they did is they got to have either a quarter, sometimes 25% of the profit from the juice and the wine that there's being, they get to keep it. Or maybe even up to a quarter to a third, you know, of the profits, or a third, they would get to keep that, and that's how they made their money, so they could go buy their own food and take care of their families and all. Well, these tenants, when the guy, I can't think of it, the landowner is what I was trying to think of. He sent servants to go ahead and collect the fruits and collect the money and such from this. Well, these guys said, well, wait a minute, you know, we haven't seen him for a long time or whatever, and they decided, well, we want to actually end up owning this ourselves. And so they beat up the servants, and the word beat means to actually flog them. They would take a whip to them, you know, and they would take it and whip them real hard and flay their skin off. Oh, it's kind of gross, but that's what that word means. And they would, these tenants would take some of the servants and beat them, and they left, or some of them they actually killed. Did you hear what I said? I mean, put them to death. It's really awful. And then now the story is so fantastic here. I mean, just really cool stuff. The star of the story, and I would say a lot of the theme of this story is about what a wonderful landowner, you know, his reaction, he could have sent in authorities and hurt them and destroyed them and put them out, hired some more. But it just goes to show you what God is like. He's merciful and he's patient. He says, oh, wow, they can't be that evil. I can't believe it. Anyway, he sent others, like other ones who came, and maybe even more important ones, you know, that have more authority, not just some of the servants or slaves that he used, and it sent more slaves out and servants, and they did the same thing to them. So he's doing it like over and over. As a matter of fact, in Mark and Luke's gospel, in the beginning, it just sent one, and then he kept sending others. And that has a meaning to it. We'll get to it. And then finally, whatever he sent them, however many, they hurt them, killed them, stoned them. They took stones and killed them that way. It's just really awful. And that was the way that the Jewish people had, in the Bible, in the Old Testament, had killed some of the prophets and all. So here's what happened. I'm thinking of Zechariah, by the way. He was killed that way. And so what happened is the servants saw the son, his son. The landowner said, you know, they're killing everybody. Well, maybe if I send my son, surely they're not going to kill him. And so he sent his beloved, it says in Mark, his only son, like his own one and only son. And he sent him, and they saw him afar off coming, and they said, you know what, if we kill him, chances are we'll be able to somehow own this. The inheritance will be ours. This will be our vineyard. And so what happened is they took the son and killed him. And what do you think this means, by the way? Can you tell? I'll tell you what it means, is that God is the star, you know, of this. God is the landowner. He's the one that owns everything. And he gave the vineyard, this beautiful vineyard, to Israel, the people of Israel, the Jewish nation. They were his people. He selected them out of all the other people and of the nations of the world and all. And yet he provided for them. And he provided, you know, a great tower. He provided them. He gave them an opportunity to work and serve him, and also wonderful stuff. And the tenants are the Jewish people. Particularly, it could be specifically the leadership at that time in the Jewish nation. And really super sad. And then the son, you know who that is. And Jesus is speaking of himself, and this is him declaring himself in a story form that he's the son. He's the Son of God. And he's predicting, not only like he did before to Peter and his apostles, he kept telling them of his death. Now he's saying it directly to the people of Israel, that I'm going to die. I'm going to be killed because of the tenants. Israel is going to put me to death, particularly the leadership. And he asked the leadership, by the way, at this point, and I'd like to turn to that question real quick and see what he specifically said and exactly what he said to him. He turned to him and he said, but when the tenants saw the son, I said that, so they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. By the way, they threw him out of the vineyard. Mark says that they killed him and then put him out. Either way, both has great meaning to it. It could be out of Jerusalem, and Jesus died out of Jerusalem, or they put him out of Israel, and they killed him and put him out of Israel, trying to get rid of Jesus. But of course they did, and he raised back from the dead. And then he will bring he asks them, therefore, when the owner of the vineyard comes, when God comes, you know, and deals with the nation in judgment and all, he says, what will he do to those tenants, to these people that are working, the people that he called to work in his field, in his vineyard? Well, the leadership, the chief priests and all, were kind of stuck in there. I don't think they really got it at this point. They were just caught up by the story and what's he trying to say and all. And if they did, they probably said this because they were trapped in a sense that they had to answer what should happen. And they said, he will bring these wretches to a wretched end. That's basically what it really says in the Greek there. It says he'll take these wretches. They're telling Jesus that the tenants were really wicked people. They were horrible, doing that to his servants and all. And he said he will bring these wretches to a wretched end. They're going to be destroyed. And he will rent or give the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the share of the crop at harvest time. They'll have fruit again. And so, well, there you go right there. And if they were really, really listening to what Jesus was saying there, the fact is, that is what happened, is that the nation of Israel, this was destroyed Jerusalem was destroyed, and a lot of the people suffered and died and everything because of their rejection of Jesus, and that's in 70 AD, 40 years later, basically, the prophecy happened, and God did come, and there's a judgment day yet to come for all of us, not just the Jewish nation, and how we treat God and how we treat his prophets. By the way, the servants, I didn't really clearly said that. I said it earlier, sort of. The servants that were sent to him, he's really referring to the prophets in the Old Testament, where God sent prophet after prophet to the nation of Israel. And so many times they did not listen. They rejected them. Sometimes they killed them. Sometimes they were sawn in two, like Isaiah was. Jeremiah was put in stocks, and they smote him. It says they hit him, and they beat him, and many others. Zechariah literally got killed by stoning him to death, one of the prophets, and they rejected the prophets. And by the way, Stephen mentioned this in Acts chapter 7, like near the end, how you guys, and he's talking to Sanhedrin there, to this Jewish leadership later after Jesus rose from the dead and all, and he's really rebuking them and saying that God sent all these prophets to you, and you killed them, and you rejected God's servants. And then he sent his son, and you crucified him. And this is Jesus actually really pointedly pointing to this group of people and saying what's going to happen. They didn't realize it's going to happen, I guess, in this week. Literally, that week is going to happen. But he's predicting it, and he's telling it, and he's telling what God's going to do. He's going to judge this nation, and that he did. So wherever you are, if you're a Jewish person or if you're a Gentile person who is not a Jew, like me, I'm a Gentile, then we need to take this very important, not just to the Jewish people, but we need to treat his leaders, the pastors, the evangelists, and people with respect. And also we need to serve Jesus in his vineyard and to work and be fruitful, to have fruit of righteousness, living right, and having faith in the Messiah, in Jesus, and serving in his kingdom, which is a vineyard. And these are wonderful stories that I think you should take heart to. And check yourself out. And what type of person are you? And are you fruitful? Are you bringing forth fruit? He came to get forth fruit, and Jesus is going to come back again. He's going to look at you, and he says, do you have fruit coming out of your life? And we're not talking about grapes and raisins, but we're talking about love and faith and righteousness, being holy, living for God. Amen.